On to the next session. And we're going to have a discussion on virtualizing our teams, presented by Corey Klein, VP of IT at Noodles & Company. Corey will discuss the many factors involved in transitioning our teams from the traditional office environment to a virtual workspace. Specific topics will include communication technologies, application access, data security, and cultural considerations. Thanks for this topic, Corey. I think we're all experiencing this. So take it away.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Look at this. Hold on. I want to make sure I can see who's here. Very, very nice to see some long lost friends and make some new friends. I was telling the NRA team that I live in the mountains just west of Boulder. Our internet isn't always the best, so I thought I would give myself and all of us the best chance for success today. I came on down the mountain. I'm in my office, and there's a concrete cutting happening outside the window. So you're welcome for that. Make sure to enjoy I've got a good internet connection, so you'll be able to hear the background noise really well. Really, my intent, my focus today is just to actually walk us through a couple of areas of consideration, that we've looked at as we closed our office and moved a workforce almost entirely remotely. So I'll share with you kind of a quick synopsis of how March went for us at Noodles & Company. And then really just divided this into 4 key areas: communications, productivity, security, and culture when it comes to a remote team, a remote central support office, as we call it. Really, what I'm intending to do is I'll share a little bit about what we did in each of these categories. And then I have a few questions, but that may not be the exhaustive list of things that are on all of your minds on this topic. So as opposed to some of the other sessions today, if you don't go off mute and share your thoughts, this is going to be entirely boring and very short, because I know all about what we've done. It's pretty straightforward, and I can go through it pretty quick. So, that's your part of this. So with that, I put a few reminders here, and I had to think about this because it seemed like a lifetime ago. March 13th was a Friday, and that's the day where all the action happened at the Noodles & Company Central Support Office. It actually goes back to March 9th, though. That was the Monday after, I think, the weekend where a lot of organizations started to go, oh my gosh, like something really significant is happening here in the US, where we kind of shifted from, oh, this is something that's happening elsewhere in the world, to, wow, what the hell are we all going to do? On March 9th, we had a casual meeting with the leadership team at Noodles & Company, acknowledged that this, COVID-19 coronavirus thing was probably a little bit bigger than we thought. And kind of left that meeting like, okay, yeah, well, we're going to need to think about this more. On March 12th, the Thursday, while I was getting in a much needed workout about 15 minutes from where our office is at, our CEO, my boss, texted me and said, hey, I got a couple of questions I need to ask you in the event that we need to close the office, which turned into, an hour later, hey, we're gonna have a meeting at 11 o'clock tomorrow, and we're gonna tell everybody what they need to do so that by the end of the day, we can close the office. So it all happened pretty quick. At 11 a.m., on Friday, we had an all hands meeting in our office. We announced that we were closing the office indefinitely. We had, we're pretty fortunate relative to the size of our organization, our number of restaurants, and even our corporate staff, if you will. We feel like a reasonably sizable IT department, but in the face of something like this, 20 people is really no match. But from noon to 4, And during that all hands meeting, because certainly there was a lot of kind of dire news and conversation topics when it was my part of the agenda, I tried to bring some levity to it. I've been reminded now easily 100 times since March 13th that I told everybody that I was sure we'd be back in the office in 3 weeks. I didn't mean 3 weeks, but had to say something. I probably should have at least said 3 months. Hopefully not 3 years. But from noon to 4, we basically set up the 15 or so members of the IT team that were available that day to do laptop health checks for about 100 people, making sure that they had migrated their content out to OneDrive, that they could access it, that they knew what the heck the VPN was, all those sorts of things. That afternoon, we also ported about 100 office phone numbers out that were associated with desks, if you will, desks and people in our corporate office. We ported about 100 office phone numbers out to Microsoft Teams. You can imagine that went very smoothly. Slight sarcasm. We, in the same breath, assigned actual corporate phone numbers to about 100 field leaders. We we did our best to give people instructions on how to disassemble the technology related equipment at their desks, and do it without breaking everything. There was some broken equipment that day, partially because in the midst of people taking monitors and docking stations, things like that, a lot of people also, this was peculiar, decided to take their chairs home. But really by 5 p.m. that day, we closed our corporate office. And though it is open, it's open for people who need to come in. Really, it hasn't been open since March 13th. Before I flip off of my story of mid-March, any particularly amusing anecdotes anybody would like to share for your situations?
Hey, Corey, it's Lou.
I knew you were there, Lou. I can see you. Hi.
Hi, Corey. I'm an IT leader and I have a problem. Now, our timeline was about a week off from yours. Our notice happened on Friday, the 20th. We started closing restaurants on Monday, the 16th. And then Monday, the 23rd was our first day work from home. A little different than your experience. We had already converted everybody to laptops. So we just instructed everybody to take their laptop home. When we separated from Darden, we standardized on Skype for Business. So we already had sort of the precursor to Teams, if you will. So our transition to working from home from a technology perspective was knock on wood, very seamless. But there had been a lot of work that had gone into it up front. And I know your story is very similar to a lot of our peers who, really had to jump through hoops those last 2 weeks of March in order to, enable the work from home experience.
Yeah, we were really fortunate in that respect too. On the computing front, we had eliminated the notion of a desktop computer a few years prior as well. We also had, I guess everybody had developed the habit of working off 2 monitors. So the thought of only having one small monitor, boy, it was amazing how that scared the hell out of us. Like 3 years ago, nobody had 2 monitors. It was also interesting the number of webcam covers that we had to chisel off laptops, because though we had the capability for several years, very few people in the organization had ever participated in a gathering like we're having right here today. We definitely needed to cover those webcams up because they were being hacked by somebody from Eastern Europe. So that was fun as well. So let's flip
Yeah, I guess
over.
our biggest challenge, like yours, was how to use the technology, because even though we had the technology in place, there weren't a whole lot of people that were leveraging it. I think the other thing that now, to your point, kind of like thinking back, it seems like so long ago. The other thing we had going in our favor was about a year prior, we had implemented a formal work from home policy. Um, so people who wanted to work from home 1 day a week were allowed to do that. So we already had a policy. There were already procedures and documents out on our intranet with regard to how to work from home. Um, and so that was going in our favor as well, but certainly not 100% of the folks at the support center um, had chosen to work from home. So we still had a fair number of people who hadn't worked from home.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so let's talk about the topic of communications first. You know, with respect to Noodles and Company, as Lou mentioned, we had been a Skype for Business organization, but it was only being used for a number of years for sending people instant messages. We had been talking about what's our timeline, what steps will we follow to transition people to Teams. Interestingly enough, we've been talking about that in late February and kind of had this like, oh boy, well, we'll leave this for a couple more months. We'll start to soft sell this. We'll leave this for a couple more months, just because it's going to be, moving people's cheese. They're going to have 1,000 questions, that kind of thing. So thankfully, we had that conversation. We actually had a picture of the whiteboard from the first time we had the conversation. But that did enable us to, I think, just like our restaurants and our guests, this situation created a bit of a forgiveness net. So we just yanked Skype away from everybody in an afternoon. We're now using Microsoft Teams for all communications, including phone calls, whether they're really just an internet-based conversation or actually a conversation involving a landline on the other end. Most of our meetings are now conducted with video, and we no longer have an office phone system. We took advantage of the fact that the office is mostly empty to send a few IT people in one day and with carts and pick up all the old ShoreTel phones that were on desks, and they no longer exist. That would have been an interesting conversation a long time ago, because people would have said, well, how do I make a phone call from my computer? But again, the answer was, we're going to be supporting our restaurants through this pandemic. We don't have time to help you with your phone call. There's this great thing called Google Figure It Out, and that didn't seem to upset too many people. But that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing at Noodles and Company. I think one particular topic of conversation is probably meeting platforms. Noodles and Company opted for to go with Teams. What are other organizations doing, and why?
Hey, Corey, can I ask a quick question? This is Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
I know, right? With your Microsoft phone setup, are you using someone else to provide dial tone and direct routing, or did you purchase dial tone from Microsoft?
We did purchase dial tone from Microsoft.
Okay.
This is Susan Whitecastle. We went with Ring Central, and we looked at it for a year. And the why is we had to make a decision, and it was it was going to be the easiest implementation for us, and it's been good for us. We have rolled it out. We replaced everything in our castles except the last phone line. And that's actually in the GM's phone numbers, I should say. Those are getting rolled out right now. So it's been good. Thank God we had it out. We had it out everywhere except GM's. Districts are even hearing it on their phones.
So you went with that platform, Susan, for your office and for the castles?
Yes. Yep.
All right. What about others? Obviously, we're using a different platform for this gathering today. What are others doing?
Hey, Corey.
This is Brian. We've been using Zoom in our company, and more so, there's no reason not to use Microsoft Teams meetings, because it is something that's free to us. But we didn't have, some of our executives were more familiar and had used Zoom in the past. So we just kind of, in the crisis of the situation and the suddenness of it, just kind of jumped into something we were more familiar with. There's obviously a cost to Zoom. And if you have Microsoft Office, you get you get Microsoft Teams with it. And so it became something that we've now learned that maybe we should jump to, but we have been using Zoom.
Hey, Corey, it's Raj Covey. Hey, we use Google Meets. So we're a Google shop. So, you know, Gmail, all that fun stuff. And that was just one of the free things they give along with their G Suite package.
At the association, we're using Zoom, but we also have Microsoft Teams, and we're now evaluating, making the shift to full-on Microsoft. We also have investments in our conference rooms that are Zoom rooms, so that's another consideration. But what I would offer for those of you that may have not taken a look at it, the amount of capability and progress that these companies are making because of COVID is just amazing in terms of the types of features that they're building into these platforms. So they're changing very rapidly, and companies that were kind of chasing in the past are caught up, if not passing, some of the leaders. So it's an active market.
Hey, Corey, John Doyle, good to see you, man.
Likewise.
Speaking of fun / strange stories, I started this role in January, so got to work 2 months out of the office and have now been working from home for 11 months. Most of you on the call know my predecessor, Ryan Nowlin, and I inherited a really good situation from him. We already had all users were on laptops. We had everybody was set up with multi-factor authentication VPN. We're using OneDrive. We had Teams and Skype in place. We had RingCentral soft phones, both in the corporate offices as well as in the restaurants. The one funny thing relative to video conferencing was I really quickly, when we went into the remote scenario, got pushed back from our CEO that he wanted Zoom. And I tried to explain that we owned Teams and were already using Teams and had Teams Skype rooms / Teams rooms hardware in all of our conference rooms in all 3 offices, and that it was free. But he really wanted that Brady Bunch Zoom view. And at that time, the max for one of the hardware systems in the rooms that Teams supported was 4x4 view. And that was just not tolerable to him. So we put $50,000 into upgrading, against my advice, upgrading all of our conference room to Zoom Room system, and another, ongoing annual $50,000 in licensing for Zoom, and it's working fine. I did see here recently that it looks like Microsoft is getting themselves set to start charging for Teams. So it's possible the point I was trying to argue about staying with Teams because it was free was moot anyway.
Yeah, for sure. A couple other questions for folks and notes from what we're experiencing. We did opt to, as we shifted over to Teams, we opted to throw a phone number. We had a field leadership team of, call it 100 people, and forever, they just haven't had a office phone. They've just used their personal cell phone. As we expanded basically this communications universe, we opted to assign them all basically a corporate phone number at this point, to put everybody on the same playing field, and also to mitigate some of the possible conversations about use of their personal phone number, privacy, things like that. Is anybody else taking the step of decommissioning an office phone system as a result of this, or for most organizations, had you already done that?
Hey Corey, this is Orville Lundby. I'm fairly new to the IT world in the restaurant business. We were actually in the process of upgrading our old AT&T Nortel phone systems to RingCentral. So we don't have all the restaurants done currently, but we got the majority of them done last year, and that also helped with the meeting part. Even the restaurants that don't currently have the Ring Central system, I set them all up for where they could log in and do their meetings, because all the meetings are being held remotely now for the manager. So that's been a very easy, smooth transition. We worked with the team at Ring Central that's really helped us, figure out our systems. And it was actually a really simple, easy process to upgrade.
Hey, question on that, Orville, because I mentioned we were on Ring Central phones as well, and part of that package included the Ring Central meetings. And for anyone who's not familiar with that, it's Zoom. It's reskinned, and it's got a Ring Central URL, but it's definitely Zoom. The controls are exactly the same. Everything's exactly the same. And when COVID hit, Ring Central opened that up to allow up to 100 people per meeting. But as I was going through this negotiation with our CEO, trying to convince him that we already owned Teams as part of our O365 licenses, I talked with Ring Central, and they had said they couldn't guarantee me how long they were going to keep that free 100 user limit, and that once they ended that special COVID deal, that users were limited to, I think, a maximum of 4 attendees per meetings. Where are they on that now?
They're still at
Well,
100.
I'm not real sure, because with us paying for it, we have it. And then what I just tell the managers that don't have the login, I just say, click on free account, and then you can join, because that meeting is sent out from a paid account.
Yeah, our max is 5. There is no, we pay for it. Our max is 100. And we also, there's a webinar version that you can go bigger, that we use for Ring Central, but we get so many minutes a month on that as a company in our package that we negotiated.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we do it, but we're well above 100. So our journey, like I said, we were Skype for Business in March. In June, we had some contracts that were coming to term, and our EA was renewing in November, and we already had plans to migrate to Teams. And as a matter of fact, most of the IT team had already gone there as sort of a proof of concept, if you will. And we had others in the functional teams that who are our super users that typically ride with us as like a beta group when we're making a switch. And so I went to my boss, the CFO, around the 1st of June and said, hey, we want to switch from Skype to Teams. And it was literally a 60-second conversation when I told him we were already paying for it. We were going to be able to eliminate all of the infrastructure that we had to support the Skype environment. And like you, because nobody was in the office when we made the switch, we went through and we took out all of the phone hardware that's in the office. So, I mean, there were huge savings that we realized migrating from Skype to Teams. We'd also been transitioning all of our restaurants to VoIP, and we've got all but 40 restaurants now on VoIP. So you asked about who provides our dial tone. So New Wave provides the dial tone at our corporate office. But Ring Central still provides the dial tone for our restaurants and our call center. I think a lot of that has to do with the IVR and everything that's already set up in there for the call center. So we've got Ring Central at the stores, and we do have Teams all the way down to the store manager level. So it's worked really well for us.
We had been using Teams for projects and running some of our monthly projects through it. So I mean, like our team member app, everything was there. We even kept our code there. But one of the reasons we went with Ring Central is what you just said, Lou. We went with Ring Central because we eventually want to route things around and do things a little bit differently, and just the interfaces that Ring Central was giving you on the call center side were just better. And that we're not committed to that plan yet, but I know we're going to go there.
That's probably a good, Susan, especially as you mentioned, that your primary, or at least initial use of Teams for projects. Let's switch over to the topic of productivity. Just a couple notes there from the Noodles and Company perspective. We had been on a slow journey to, ensure that everybody, in our case, especially since we're so Microsoft top to bottom, was no longer saving individual content, just on their hard drive. We had been starting to educate people about OneDrive. We still had most of the shared content for us in the organization was still on internal file servers. So we pretty quickly post office closure got aggressive about OneDrive and moving content to SharePoint Online. For the long view, that's had a lot to do with our intentions with DLP. In the short term, though, we were able to. People don't like the VPN. They don't even understand what the heck it is. When they've connected it or not connected it, they think the VPN is their home internet or the office internet. Really difficult to explain and get some people to work through that. So that was our motivation and our sell for it. At this point, we only have one department who has an ongoing need for our VPN. That's our accounting team, because our AP and GL is still hosted on-prem. And then we developed a standard template for department-specific teams, so that we would set up a team for each department, trying not to have too much scope creep there, but to help people keep their department conversations consolidated in one place versus 1,000 different combinations of chat users. But when it comes to productivity, what's everybody else doing? Have you had any department or application specific challenges? Are there tools that you've been using virtually, virtual whiteboards or anything else of that sort, besides just, video conference calls that have been effective?
Okay, I'll go again. We have because I was hesitating because I can't remember the name of the company, but we have a digital asset management system that my company was just dying for. I mean, so many departments, and we've been moving all of our, we're 100 years old, so we get a lot of pictures. We've been moving all of our assets and archiving them before COVID, and during COVID, it became a nice way to give people stuff to do on jobs that didn't have a lot. So, putting metadata in for pictures and the organization of it. So it's pretty substantial load off our networks to get that out of there. Anything from the marketing, ridiculously sized assets that we have, but also historical pictures that we still had. It was a big project, but what a difference. I mean, it's a big pig on everybody's network, I'm sure. And it also helped us to stop the agencies we were using Box with them. So we had a lot of assets in Box. There was no organizational structure. There was some, but it wasn't like it could have been. And but we didn't have any revision control. We didn't have any control. And so that kind of locked us in and had one copy of everything. It was good. So if anybody, I'll find out if anybody wants to know, I'll find out what the name is.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can speak to any specific tools that we found. We were already heavy SharePoint users, so the functional teams were already used to using, Teams for content, SharePoint for content. We do have some folks, aside from video conferencing and chat or IM and Teams. I mean, we've got some functional like super users who have, we didn't create what you're calling a standard template for departmental teams, but we did communicate what Teams was. People that wanted to learn more, we kind of put them with subject matter experts within the IT team. For us internally, we had some processes where we were keeping revisions of PowerPoint decks for like PMO meetings and all of our project management artifacts for each of the projects. And so we've created teams, and we're using apps in some instances. So some of the functional super users have used, the apps that are in Teams to do some pretty amazing stuff. The big pinch point for us is the file server. So we were encouraging people to move their H drive, which was their personal file server drive, to to OneDrive. When the shutdown happened, we pretty much forced everybody off of the file server for their individual share. The problem is the spider web of functional and the embedded nature of some of these share drives in production application flows for HR, payroll, accounting. I mean, just right down the line. Even internal IT processes that go to the file, go to the file share. So we're just now kind of embarking on starting to tease out that spider web and start to move things holistically to finally deprecate the file share completely. But I mean, that's not going to be a small task. And it's 12 months from now, I'll still be talking to you about our file share, although hopefully the iceberg will have melted significantly since then. But that's been our biggest challenge, and there's really no good automated way to make that happen.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be talking about it in 12 months and not screaming about it. We're in the same quest right now, Lou, and we've only broken payroll once, literally. Who knew? All right. Well, I'm watching the clock here. We've only got 9 minutes, so in the interest of time, let's talk. We'll do 5 and 5 or 4 and 4. Talk briefly about security, because that certainly is something that we were thinking about right away, and it's very easy. It's very cliche to go, oh, well, the workforce is all remote now and virtual, so of course we need to think about it. But we certainly, I think, realized a few of the nuances. At least the Noodles and Company team did, and I think all of us have seen now how this landscape has blown up over the last, especially 6 months. In our case, one of the top things that we did was quickly completed the transition to managing all of our users via Intune, basically eliminating the dependency on connectivity to the domain. That was a pretty great concern to us, because again, we had a bunch of people that don't necessarily know how to use the VPN. We don't want to expose the domain externally, and so that was a decent solve for us there. We are very, very focused on ransomware at this point. I think a lot of organizations are. Not to say that we weren't before, but if you talk about losing sleep right now, that this is one that's on my list. Any particular events or evolving type of security issues that anybody has experienced, kind of unique to this, to the time we're working in?
Tremendous increase in bot traffic on the e-commerce site.
I don't know if this is unique to COVID and remote working. We did suffer a business email compromise in October, where a user in finance received a phishing attempt and entered their network username and password and compromised their email. And then the attackers used that account to send a broader phishing attempt against basically the whole company and some external users, and had a number of people click through and provide their credentials. And then the day after that, attempted a relatively sophisticated $125,000 ACH fraud attempt, but our internal approval controls caught it, and we didn't pay anything, and we've locked things back down again. Anyway, it's caused us to do a reevaluation. We use Proofpoint for our email scanning, and we did an in-depth evaluation with Proofpoint on, because there's thousands of rules in there, and really tightened down our rules. And we haven't gotten any of these tap alerts that someone's clicked through on a malicious link. We haven't received a single one since we reevaluated the rules with them.
We had the same kind of problem. We were lucky this time. One of our partners got breached and had lost control of a lot of email accounts, and they were sending stuff out. So it looked like it was coming from partners. And luckily, we use Rapid7 for our RDR, and as soon as they went right after Office 365, and it just immediately started flagging because these are users that don't have anything up there, so we know to look. It was like a honeypot without meaning it to be. And we locked it down pretty quick, but we had some incidents similar to yours in the past as well. So we went to Mimecast, but we've noticed the same thing that you did, which is they're both complicated, right? You have to like really keep layering stuff on. But I think once we rolled that URL protection out, that was amazing because how much stuff it's catching. So yeah, I would say that that's getting hit a lot. We also have a lot of impersonations going on, and it helps with that. And a lot of people pretending to be somebody else, companies, other partner companies of ours, and people. So that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, we could probably talk about this one all day. At least I could. So let's wrap things up with a few, few thoughts, brief discussion on culture. This is one that, I don't know. Are we living in bad times or different times? Hard to say some days. Definitely different. And there's some really positive things, at least from my perspective and what we've seen at Noodles and Company, that have come from a challenging situation. This is an area that I think really highlights that, at least it has for us. One of the things that we've started doing is we have a 30-minute meeting every week. That's an all hands meeting. And we've had these meetings at least monthly for a long time. But the way that it's amazing how a little structural change can bring people together, because what we had was 100 people in an office, and then, those people that happened to be in the field who happened to run our restaurants and make all the money, that would get dialed in. They could never see anybody. They were on mute. Now we have a 30-minute meeting every week. And whether you're a staff accountant or an area manager servicing our restaurants, we're all kind of connecting in the same way. It's been amazing for the bond between our central support office and the field. We've had most departments, it's still somewhat ad hoc, or obviously holding weekly meetings. It was interesting because early on everybody was kind of doing the same thing and just trying to keep people updated. Then a few weeks or a month or two in, nobody really knew what to do at the time. And now there's been just a kind of a fountain of creativity when it comes to, hey, maybe we need a business update within a department once a month, but what do we do the other times? The most creative that I've experienced was a virtual escape room that was facilitated by some people in our HR team. But that was, this has been another really interesting area for us. So any, culturally, any interesting stories, things to share? Susan?
I want you to find out about the virtual call. That we're going to know about how to do this escape room thing.
I'll send it to you. I've yet to do one myself.
So we played a game. There's out of work actors in New York. It's called Secret Library. It was chaotic. Some of my people loved it. My introverts were like, oh my God, it's too much. But it was like being on a clue board and there's actors there in the different rooms. And we did that. And I know it was how do we celebrate? And we do an end of year celebration every year, not really holiday centric, just around the end of the year. And, it helped, right? Because it was anything we can do. And today we did something weird. We started doing, I told one of my teams, because we're not communicating as well as we were before. And I don't mean with each other, I mean with our users. And so I told them they had to have a fun and engaging tech meeting for operations on technology once a month. And it's actually called the Fun and Engaging Optional Meeting. And they were funny and they were showing stuff. And I keep getting letters. That's where I went a little bit ago because I didn't watch them. And because people they want to hear about stuff, but they don't really want to be nerded up too much. So I think they did so that's unusual, right? Just trying to be different. And I prepped everybody for it in case somebody thought it was silly, but you gotta try harder.
We had a goat farmer attend one of our meetings virtually with a dozen baby goats. He charged us $50. It was awesome.
There was a goat in ours too, Corey, which is really weird. So we had but it wasn't there. One of the guys is a goat farmer, and he had a picture of him and a goat, and the guy who was his co-host in a different room, of course, kept holding that picture of the two of them up. I have no idea why. And but so apparently goats are an important theme that we all should take back to our teams.
Hey, this is Susan Lucas. I just joined so recently, but we did something with there's just companies out there that do things like trivia, right? And we did trivia and did it kind of purposefully behind the scenes and broke it up to teams. So you could kind of predefine how the teams broke up as people that we wanted to interact and start to develop that bond, and so, but the virtual trivia worked pretty well because everybody could see the same thing and could answer. So that worked pretty well for us just to get people engaged with each other and feel like they're doing those things. We do Hangman all the time. We use the whiteboard in Microsoft Teams. Hangman has been like a tradition that we started long ago when we were in the office, and we pull in others from the other departments. So it's just, goofy things that are kind of cheesy, but just help to, build that culture and keep people feel like somewhat connected.
I'll just say, let me add on, this is Brian Keyes. I think if I had to pick one thing that was the most impactful thing to, I think, the world, it may be these virtual meetings. I mean, it's amazing how effective businesses can be and actually accomplish and get things done. We all think about the way we do things, and we're always in person, so it's real difficult to make the switch. But I think about stuff, gosh, my son was supposed to work for AT&T right out of college, and when this pandemic hit, they pretty quickly, AT&T said, guess what? You're not coming in the office till July of next year. They made that call early on, and I was like, wow, they're making that call right now. They must know something I don't. I mean, anyway, but our president and our CEO, in the middle of the crises, we're able to get him with FaceTime with all of our people who are just worrying about whether or not we're going to be in business. And I can't put a dollar value on that and how that was important. So we would schedule that with him during the most trying times, critical. I learned yesterday that my son, who lives remotely with us, so I just told you about, worked for AT&T, he got COVID yesterday. So here I am in the same household here in my office, and but I was going to drive tonight to Augusta to do manager year-end reviews. Well, now I'm going to do it by Zoom, and I thought to myself, why would you drive to Augusta to do that? I should be doing it by Zoom anyway. So I've had seminars. I've taught food safety on Zoom. It's not easy to do, but it works.
Hey, here's a question, and just food for thought. Obviously, we don't know how long COVID's going to last, but we can pretty reasonably project that things are not going to snap all the way back to the pre-COVID normal. I feel like we've learned a lot about how effective remote working can be. And I've got kind of a unique situation. If you don't know Fiesta well, we've got two brands, and we actually have a brand headquarters for Pollo Tropical in Miami, and we have a brand headquarters for Taco Cabana in San Antonio. And then we have my office in Dallas that's nothing but IT and finance that supports both brands. We pay $750,000 a year in rent for. So I've asked the C-suite, hey, seriously think about this. Can we downsize that space to something where we've got, some conference rooms and hoteling stations and a mail room and a storage closet, and cut our costs by 75%? And is that a better model going forward?
I would say we're all probably having those same questions and thoughts, quite honestly.
Yeah, we just built it.
And Brian, my comment to you as to why would you go to Augusta is because you're tired of sitting in your office for the last 10 months. And the idea of getting in your car and driving somewhere, even if it's just to have a 1 hour or 2 hour conversation and driving back, probably seems like a tropical vacation.
No, you're right. I want to go, and I was very disappointed when I couldn't, but I did have a solution, which is the positive silver lining.
Well, all the best for your son. Quick recovery.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I agree with you, Brian. I think, what an amazing technology change. And Corey said something too that I think you know, we've always did that where that one person who's traveling all the time was the person who was, we used webinars, you know, but the people in the room would always just sit there and stare at each other. And the person on the webinar that was looking over the room was like, what? You know, like what's even going on? And so what we've been doing is when we're in mixed mode like that, people still have their cameras on themselves, even if the voice is being picked up by the room. And it just adds something, right? There's another, it's a face. You can still see the face. You can still talking. You know, I'm a big interrupter. I can't, it's like I need every possible visual cue to know that you're ready for me to talk. And so I think this helps. I think we're going to get there, and it's going to be better when we're done, because I remember having a talk with a vice president of operations who didn't speak up during something in a meeting. And he's like, I couldn't even figure out how to talk, how to get the word in, because I ended up saying something for him. And then and of course, you know, it got the situation resolved, but it was just weird. You don't want to have your business function in a way that they don't feel
You know,
committed.
and even with management teams per restaurant, you know, they can do the same thing. They can have their own meeting, and it used to be, well, somebody's always got to come in the restaurant on their day off for a management meeting. Now there's a solution to that. They can be at their house, and I think we've learned some things from this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, a lot of great ideas today, everybody. And just as many questions and unknowns per the usual. Kevin, I'll turn it back over to you. And if everybody keeps talking, it's on your dime now.
That was great. And certainly this is the type of dialogue and interaction that, you know, we're famous for as a technology group, and we encourage and love. So we'll take a break. We are scheduled to come back together at 3:00 for Red Lobster's story on response to the COVID pandemic. So you will find that link again in your invite. We've been doing a pretty good job moving from session to session. So we'll see you all again in about now 13 minutes.
See you soon.
Thanks.